Welcome to our Savvy series. I'm Catherine Magaña here with Rachel Ivanovich. And today we're going to have a discussion on the emotional side of money decisions after loss. And we've been spending the last few weeks on this topic. We talked about the first 90 days after loss. We went over inherited IRAs and some planning techniques there. Last week we actually talked about income after loss. And so today we kind of thought we'd kind of do more of the feelings about loss. And we know that losing a spouse or a family member changes everything. I mean, it's obviously a big life.
It's a very sensitive topic.
And it's something that I think, and we want to make sure that you understand the process and it's okay to feel certain ways. And so we're just going to continue this conversation. And we know that there's a lot of decisions that have to be made, and there could be some fear, am I making the right decisions? And obviously there's, we want to help you feel confident about these decisions that you're making.
And honestly, losing your spouse changes everything.
Yeah.
Including how money feels to you. And this is completely normal. I was actually reading an article from the American Brain Foundation about how loss changes how our brain is wired. I thought that was so interesting.
Wow.
There was a Dr. Schulman who wrote this article, and she basically, your brain's goal is survival.
Yeah.
And so if you have brain fog, or if you are just having a hard time processing things, that's completely normal.
Yeah, so it's obviously having a lot of decisions to make, and then if you're in this other state, it's just
this is why money decisions feel so hard after loss.
Well, it's interesting you say that. We actually have a client that came on board with us last year, and her husband's been passed away about 7 years ago. But she, as we're having conversations and looking and helping her, she's referred many times that her husband handled this in the past, and she really wants to be educated and know. And so I sense that even several years later, potentially, when
it's a huge identity shift, because you're going from we to me, and really processing that when your brain and you have that cognitive fog. And I mean, it's a real response, because you're stuck in like fight, flight, or freeze for so long. So even after 7 years, I can completely understand why.
And you're having to make these decisions, and that's why I think having trusted advisors or people to help you. I mean, they're here to make sure you're making those right decisions. And it doesn't mean you have to make decisions right away. It's just, it comes over time. But I definitely feel that it's important that you have some sounding boards and people that you can talk to. And it's interesting. We actually have a client, a couple that came in, that's been working with us, and the husband actually handles everything, and they're a little bit older, and so he wanted her to kind of learn or have a relationship with someone.
Several clients
like
come
that.
in and
because of that. Yeah, and it's like the spouses, they still want to be involved, but they want their spouses to start building that relationship, so that if something ever happened to either one of them, that they know, okay, they're in good hands. Because what we find is, once again, we don't want you to make decisions subtly or not have a relationship with somebody when that time comes.
Well, especially when you are the we.
Yeah.
You're used to, leaning on each other for that, but also that's your kind of your financial safety partner. And so when you all of a sudden lose that person, I mean, you've lost so much, and money is symbolic for, security and stability and your survival even and control. You've lost all of that after your partner's gone, and now all of a sudden it's, I have to do this all by myself. Yeah. And like you said, it's so important to build a team, and so that you're not alone.
Yeah, and I think what happens occasionally is that the fear kicks in. So you have this fear of, am I going to run out of money? Am I making the right decisions? What about, would my spouse do this? Or so I think there's some doubt that comes into play.
And you're afraid of being taken advantage of. I think we have a lot of clients who come in, and they're very hesitant to start working because they were always reliant on their spouse, and now all of a sudden it's all them.
Well, it's interesting.
It's a real fear.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because we you're talking with a prospective client where she inherited money from a family member, and it sounds like this. It's been a few years, but she's really, it's been a big change, and I feel like she's just looking for the right people to help her, because it sounds like she's been inundated with a lot of resources.
Well,
So-
and people come out of the woodwork and
Yeah.
when they find out you've inherited money,
Yeah.
and so it's really finding people that you can trust.
Yeah, and in advance if you can. So let's talk about kind of what widows aren't told. So
I think we talked about this on
we
the
have,
podcast.
we did in the past. So some of this might overlap a little bit, but we talked
But
about.
it's important to know this.
Yeah, that, there's some major decisions that can wait. So obviously within the first 6 to 12 months, kind of avoiding those big, I want to sell my house or I want to,
Right.
move
The
somewhere
big
else.
permanent
I know.
decisions,
Although
yeah.
potentially with the step up in basis, I mean, there are some things
Might
to
make
consider,
sense,
but I think not doing it right away
A
potentially.
knee-jerk reaction is probably not the best decision for you
Yes,
right
it's
after
like
you lose someone.
give yourself some time and space.
Yeah.
Some big maybe investment changes. I wouldn't do something like that. Just kind of keep things steady, and then kind of looking at I wouldn't make any major big.
Lifestyle changes?
Yeah, lights out or gifting or yes, you may want to gift,
Yeah.
but maybe plan it out. And so I definitely feel that decisions can be made, but nothing short term. Really give yourself space to really
process
and
get through the
everything.
brain fog, I think. But also right away, I think what people aren't told is that they get to file jointly for one final year. And so that can create a lot of planning opportunities. And you still have that married filing joint status, but you may be, depending on what time of year it happens, you may have you go from 2 incomes to 1. So it does create a lot of planning opportunities. There's things with Social Security that may change, pensions may change, and then there is that tax bracket surprise the following year where you go from married filing joint to single,
Yeah.
and maybe you're not losing income. So you definitely want.
There's some tax planning
there's
and
some
maybe
tax
partial
planning
off
that-
conversions, even though you don't want to do a lot, but there's it's a year where there might be some good
Exactly.
opportunities for
Yeah,
you.
so maybe
to-
not right away the first couple of months,
Yeah,
but
but
definitely don't let that planning opportunity and window go to waste.
And so one of the things to consider is even though the numbers may change or look a little different, but the
Yeah.
reality is, I mean, you still have certain assets you can live on, and perhaps maybe the income might change a little bit from 2 Social Securities or a pension might have a survivor benefit. But then it's looking at your investments. How much income do you need from your investable assets too? So there's
Just
definitely
need to recalculate things
Yeah.
and look at it from a different perspective, maybe.
and perhaps the cost of things might be slightly different because there's
Less
one.
expenses, yeah,
So-
maybe.
And so another thing that comes up are obviously building back that confidence or being educated, and we definitely feel we have a lot of resources and are available to have those conversations, but we definitely feel that we're it's something to consider.
I think building your confidence back, it doesn't come immediately,
Yeah.
but I think building trusted partnerships, educating yourself, finding the right people to support you is really key, and just keep moving because,
Yeah.
like I was saying at the beginning, we tend when we have PTSD or when the grief hits, you get into the fight, flight, or freeze, and so I think by keeping moving and making small steps forward in your journey makes a lot of sense. But like you said, don't make the huge knee-jerk reactions
No.
and the big permanent decisions, but some temporary things.
Yeah, like the bills and some things that definitely need to
keep
continue.
going. Yeah, you got to pay your bills.
Yes, that's important.
Find where the statements are. If you don't know where financial statements are, account statements, bank statements, credit card statements, if you have those, make sure you're reviewing those, and then make sure you're meeting with advisors. But moving forward matters.
It does, and obviously thinking about a little bit of clarity of what is your situation, what kind of income is coming in that's
right. What
kind of
income is
fixed
there?
and what guaranteed, and what kind of income is not, and so kind of looking at the balance of that, and then obviously kind of looking, once you kind of get past that point and you're ready to kind of reevaluate your financial situation, kind of looking at making decisions from. Instead of do I have enough to what kind of life do I want in my future? And so we actually just did it last night. We did a little workshop, her financial year.
It was fun.
It was a lot of fun. Hopefully
We had a great turnout, too.
we did, and we'll hopefully do some more events this year that are a little more interactive. But one of the things that we talked about last night was kind of the money mindset and how to look at money as a tool. And what's interesting is we did a little exercise together. And we've done this with some of our other workshops and had this conversation with women is it sounds like money wasn't taught or brought up, and there's still a relationship with money that perhaps you don't realize are things that bring you back. And so
A lot of beliefs that aren't really true that need to be worked through.
And so, obviously we talked about releasing certain things and kind of looking forward. And with that, we also talked a little bit about values and kind of setting some intentions for the year. And so I know we also have another workshop. We do that in a little more in depth. But
I think it's important to move from making fear-based decisions and really looking at what's most important to me and how do I tie my values with my money, the decisions I make around money.
And so one of the things we also did last night was we did some financial vision boards. So we were able to tie in and have a little activities.
It's fun to see what people put on them.
I know. It's like, and everybody was a little different and it was creative. And so if you weren't able to join us, but you still want to have those conversations, obviously we're here to have that with you, and we'll have other workshops as well. And so we just kind of reiterate that, obviously there's a lot of change and it's okay to have those feelings. And obviously you want to make sure that you are moving forward.
And you're not supposed to know everything.
Yes.
And you're allowed to ask for help. That's important to know that, there are people who really want to support you through this.
And it's okay to not have all the answers, and it's okay to learn, and it might take a little bit of time. So I know we covered a lot this month and today, and once again, if you'd like to have a complimentary strategy session with us, you can reach us at 760-692-5700. And we want to thank you today for getting savvy with us about your finances, and remember to savvy up. Please stay tuned for important disclosures. The opinions expressed in this program are for general informational purposes only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual or any specific security. It is only intended to provide education about the financial industry. To determine which investments may be appropriate for you, consult your financial advisor prior to investing. Any past performance discussed during this program is no guarantee of future results, and the indices referenced for comparison are unmanaged and cannot be invested into directly. As always, please remember investing involves risk and possible loss of principal capital. Please seek advice from a licensed professional. Savvy Woman Wealth Management is a registered investment advisor with the SEC.